Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Peh. We learned that there is a prohibition for a child to curse or hit a parent on the pain of death penalty. So now we ask a question. Be'omine merav sheshat. Ben ma'u sheyaseh shaliach le'aviv lahakoto ulkalelo. They asked Rav Sheshat, can a son become a messenger of a court to hit or curse his father? Let's say someone's father did a sin for which he is liable to lashes. Now someone has to give the lashes. So the court sentences him and says, you're deserving of lashes. And the court appoints someone to give him lashes. What if it happens to be that the person who gives lashes for the court is the criminal's own son? Can he give his father lashes? Or, let's say, to curse him, meaning if the court says this person is excommunicated, that's a type of curse. And so can the son be the one to deliver the curse and excommunicate his own father? On the one hand, we have a prohibition that a son cannot hit or curse his father. On the other hand, this is a situation where it must be done. So maybe it's permitted because the court ordered it. That's the question. Amar lehu v'acher mihitiro ela kevod shamayim adif hacha name kevod shamayim adif. Rav Sheshat gives a clear answer. What about someone else, not his son? Is a random person permitted to hit someone or to curse someone? There's a general prohibition against anybody hitting or cursing someone. Now it's true, it's a different level of prohibition. If one curses or hits a parent, then that is chayav mitah. If a different person, not related, curses or hits someone, then they have to pay for damages. But still, it's a prohibition. So it's prohibited for other people also. And yet, we permit a non-related person to give punishment and give lashes or excommunication. So why is it permitted for anybody else? Because the honor of heaven is more important. If this person did a sin, whatever they did, they deserve lashes. So this is honor of heaven to give him the punishment that is deserved according to the Torah. And that will apply also to a son. In general, of course, a son cannot hit or curse a parent, but if it's in a matter of God's honor, because we have to give them a punishment because they committed a transgression, then a son is permitted to act as a shaliach for the Bet Din and even curse or hit, excommunicate his own father. That is Rav Sheshat's opinion. However, we're going to have a few challenges against Rav Sheshat. And the first one is from this Baraita. Metibe. Ma uma mi she mesuve lakoto. Misva shelo lahakoto. Mi she eno mesuve lakoto. Eno din she misva shelo lahakoto. The Baraita is kind of ambiguous, not really clear who it's talking about. But basically it says, if someone who is commanded to hit him, something to do with commanded to hit the criminal, and there is a mitzvah not to hit him, meaning not to hit him too many times. You can't hit him more than 39 times or more than a number of times that he can handle without dying. So someone who is not commanded to hit him, all the more so, is not commanded to hit him. Now, who is this referring to? Who's the person that's commanded and not commanded? Both of them can't give extra, certainly can't give extra, or maybe give any. So let's see. My love, idi v'idi b'makom mitzvah. Habib no, habe acher. Is it not true that both clauses of the Braita are talking about where it's a mitzvah, where the Bet Din authorizes this person needs to get hit, they deserve lashes? And the last clause is talking about the son. The first clause is talking about a not related person. And so here's how the Baraita would read according to that. If someone who is commanded, this is a non-related person who is designated by the court, is commanded, he has to hit the criminal, and yet even that person is commanded not to hit the person too many times, more than the 39 that are authorized. So also, all the more so, someone who is not commanded to hit, that's referring to a son, who is not only not commanded, he's commanded not to hit a father, all the more so, he cannot hit all the more so he's commanded not to hit. And here the commanded not to hit we're taking as not hit at all. So it's a kind of analogy. If someone who is not related, and yet the Bet Din says, okay, you can hit this guy, so as a mitzvah to hit this guy, he can't hit him too many times, only 39 times or whatever he can handle. So by analogy, a son who is commanded on an even higher level not to hit the father certainly cannot hit the father at all, not even if Bet Din says so, that if we interpret the Baraita that way, that would be a challenge against Rav Sheshet. But the Baraita really is pretty ambiguous, and we can interpret it a different way. So we can answer for Rav Sheshet as follows: La idi v'idi, la shena beno, v'la shena acher, v'la kashya, kan makom b'makom misvah, kan shelo b'makom misvah. No, we can say both clauses of the Mishnah. It doesn't matter whether it's the son or anybody else. So rather, what's the difference between the first and second clause? One of them is talking about where the Bet Din said to hit them. That's the first clause. And the second clause is talking about someone who's hitting where the Bet Din did not say to do so. He's just hitting his friend randomly. And this is what the Braita would mean. If a Shaliach Bet Din, who's commanded to hit the person, and yet is commanded, don't hit him more than the number of times, don't hit him more than 39 times. So for sure, someone who's not commanded to hit, meaning not a Shelech Bet Din, someone who's just gonna wants to hit his friend because he's upset at him, all the more so, there's a commandment not to hit that person. In other words, we're going to learn from here the general prohibition against hitting people. That not related to you, not a parent. This is the source of the derivation. In the case where someone is allowed to hit someone else because it's a shaliach bet din, but you're only allowed to give the designated amount. You can't hit him more. So all the more so, if someone's not in the context of bet din, he just wants to hit his friend, he's upset, certainly that is not allowed to do. And so this has nothing to do with a son hitting a father, and therefore Rav Sheshet says, I responded to the question. This baraita is not a challenge against Rav Sheshet. All right, so we resolved that challenge, but now we have another from another baraita, Tashema. Let's say someone is already given a verdict to be executed, and they're taking him out they're going to stone him. He did something wrong, and the verdict was already given. Now, on the way, while he's being taken out to be stoned, his son comes and hits the father or curses the father. The son is liable to the death penalty for doing that, even though the father's about to get death penalty anyway. But the son who does that is deserving of death penalty. However, if a not related person, not his son, comes and hits or curses the person who's about to be killed, then that hitter or cursor is not liable. That's what the Baraita says. Now it's difficult to figure out why. What's the difference between a son who is liable for hitting someone who's about to be executed, and another person who's not related is not liable for anything, it seems, for hitting someone who's on death row? What's the difference? Rav Chisda says we're talking about a person, the criminal, is refusing to go. Right? The court says, okay, you're liable to death. Go walk to the building where they're going to kill you, and he refuses to go, and he won't go willingly. So then the court has to ask the bailiff to go ahead and hit the guy or curse the guy, yell at him, and so that he will go. Now that bailiff is authorized by the court to do so. So who can do that? That's what this case is talking about. If it's not a related person, the bailiff is not related to the criminal, then he can do so. But if the son is the bailiff, no, he should not do so. A son should not be hitting the father or cursing the father, even though the Bet Din authorized him to do so because the son is the bailiff. So we see from here a challenge against Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet says if a court is appointed a son to hit or curse the father, then he's allowed to do so, because Kivot Shamayim is more important. But according to Rav Chisda's interpretation of this baraita, someone else can do it, but a son would be liable to the death penalty for cursing or hitting a father, even though the Bet Din appointed him. That's the challenge. Rav Sheshet mukila b'shen v'sarbin bo laseh. So we answer, no, Rav Sheshet interprets this baraita as talking about a case where the criminal is not refusing. He's going willingly. Sometimes when the person goes willingly to the death penalty, people will throw things at him, will hit him, curse him because he's some criminal, he did something really bad. And so people are cursing him and so on. And so he's doing it willingly. That's the case we're talking about. And that's why a son who hits his father, well, the father's walking willingly, so the son is not acting as a sheliach betin. That's why the son is liable, because he's going willingly. That's Rav Sheshat's answer. We ask about the wait, if the criminal is going willingly, then a non-related person also should not be allowed to hit him. What right does anyone have to go and hit a person when the betin did not authorize it? So what's the difference between a son and an unrelated person? So we answer, Rav Sheshat can answer, regarding others, this person is, since he's a criminal, he's a dead man. He's about to be killed. And so he's considered legally, in a way, already dead. So what are you doing? You're cursing a dead person or hitting a dead person? So there's no liability to that. But for a son does have liability for cursing even a father who is dead. Now we ask about that. V'ha'amar Rav Sheshat b'yesho yashen v'met hayav hachav ma'iskenan b'shekah haka'a she'en ba shaveh peruta. Hold on, Rav Sheshat himself. You gave this answer for Rav Sheshat, but Rav Sheshat himself said that if someone embarrasses or curses someone who is sleeping, and that person never wakes up. He was sleeping and then he died in his sleep. Do you have to pay? Because the person never experienced the humility. If he was sleeping and he cursed him while he was sleeping, then he woke up and everybody will tell him, oh, this guy, what he said about you while you were sleeping, so he's going to feel the embarrassment. So then certainly you have to pay. But since the guy, he was sleeping when he got embarrassed, and then he died, so he never felt it. But Rav Sheshat says, nevertheless, you have to pay. You have to pay the heirs because it's an embarrassment for the family. And if that's true, this is talking about a random person, not related, then it should be true also here, where even though he's a dead man walking, but if other people come and curse him, humiliate him, then they should be, that whoever hits him or curses him should be liable to pay the heirs. And so there is liability, even though it's gabra ketila. So therefore, both a son and a non-related person should be liable for cursing the criminal who's going out to be killed. So what's the difference between them? So we answer, this case was talking about where he hits him just a little bit. It's not shaveh peruta. If you hit someone, just like a little slap, how much is the damages for and the pain and all that? It's worth half a penny. Well, half a penny you can't pay. So that's why for a random person that does it, there's no payment. Whereas if a son that does it, it doesn't matter that it's worth half a penny, they're still going to get the death penalty, right? Because that's the difference between injury that you have to pay money and that's for another person who's not related, they have to pay. But if you can't pay, then it's not going to be anything. That's why it says patur for that person. Whereas a son who hits the father or curses the father, even if it's less than shaveh peruta, it still is a death penalty, and that's why it says chayav. Hold on, Rabbi Yochanan said, if non-related people, someone comes and hits another person, and it's just a tiny hit that's worth, the damages are worth less than a penny, so then the person who hits actually gets lashes in that case, right? Because there's a general rule, you don't get lashes and payment for one act. So generally, if you hit someone and you caused them damage of $100, you're going to pay $100 and you're not going to get lashes. But if it's so little that you don't pay at all, well, then the lashes comes up because it's also a prohibition. There is a prohibition to hit someone. It's not like I can go and hit you and pay you $100. So if I'm willing to pay, can I just do it? Is that okay? If I'm willing to pay a parking ticket, can I double park? I don't care to pay, right? So the answer is no. At least in terms of hitting someone, you're not allowed. That's also a prohibition. Generally, if it's worth money, then you pay, so you don't get lashes. But if it's so little, ironically, although you hit him so little that you don't pay, well, now you get lashes. So therefore, when it says that back to the Baraita, it should say chayav for both. A son who hits a father less than a peruta will be chayav mita, and a non-related person who hits the criminal should be also chayav lashes. My patur de kamar patur memon. So we answer when it says patur in the Mishnah. it means that he doesn't have to pay money, but indeed he would get lashes. Okay, if patur in this sentence means patur from paying money, so then that means the first clause of the baraita, where it says a son who hits his father who's going out to be killed is chayav, it must be the same, that he's liable to money. But obviously that's not what it's talking about. A son who hits his father or curses the father is going to be liable to the death penalty. So since over here it means the death penalty, so too in the sefa about someone else, it can't mean just money. Ela bedino, hachaname bedino. Since with a son and a father, it's whatever his punishment is, which is a death sentence. So too regarding someone else, it must be the sentence that he deserves which is lashes. So we still don't have an answer to explain the difference between a son and any other person who curses or hits the person who's going out to be killed. The reason why a non-related person who curses someone, and again, we're talking about that he's not a shaliach betin, because this is we're trying to answer within Rav Sheshat. This is just a random person. The guy's going out willingly. He's walking to the building where they're going to throw him off, and then someone comes and curses him. Well, the pasuk says that a ruler among your people do not sin. Since it says be'amecha, within your people, we learn only someone who is acting in a way that is within the normal behavior of the people. In other words, someone who's following halacha. But if someone is a sinner, then they're no longer called be'amecha. They're not acting in the way that's appropriate for your nation. And this person who's taken out to be given capital punishment, obviously he does something really bad. So he lost his right to be called be'amecha, and therefore there is no prohibition to curse him. That's why a non-related person that curses someone who's being taken out to capital punishment, that gets no punishment. Whereas that's not true for a parent. For a parent, the prohibition against cursing a parent remains even if the parent is a sinner. Okay, fine. That's true. That we can understand regarding cursing. But what about hitting? Right? Because this pasuk only says that you can't curse someone who is in your nation, but you can curse someone who is a sinner. But how about hitting? It doesn't say that about hitting. And we answer, we make a comparison between cursing and hitting, and so the same is true. Just like for cursing, so too for hitting. You're not allowed to hit a person generally, but if someone is a criminal, then they lose their right, and then one can hit them. Okay, fine. That's talking about a non-related person, and that's why that says patur. Wait a second. If you say that someone who is a sinner, one can curse him and hit him, then why not say the same thing is true for a son and a father? Maybe a son is allowed to hit and curse a father who is a sinner because they're no longer part of the nation and they lose their right to be protected by this law. And a son who curses his father who's a criminal, and this person is a criminal because he's being taken out to be given capital punishment, the son also, we should say, is patur. So we answer this, Rav Pinchas said in a different context that we're talking about a case of someone who repented, and we could apply that here also, where the father repented. Even though he's being taken out to be killed, he's still going to be killed, because in Bet Din, a human court, even if someone repents and says, yes, I did it, I'm sorry, still he did the crime, so the Bet Din, Shel Mata, is still going to punish him. But in terms of his moral guilt, and as it would apply to someone cursing him or killing him, he made teshuvah, so now he's part of the people, and therefore the son cannot kill him or cannot curse him or hit him, and that's why the son is liable. Okay, but now we ask, if the criminal made teshuvah, then no one is allowed to curse him or hit him and would be liable. So it should be the same. Now the son and the acher should both be liable. Amar Rav Mari be'amecha b'mkuyam she be'amecha. Rav Mari says be'amecha of your people means someone who's enduring among your people. In other words, even though he made teshuvah, he's not going to live long because his execution is imminent. And that's why one is only not allowed to curse someone who is a part of the nation, nation. And yes, he's part of the nation because he made teshuvah, but he's not going to be part of the nation for long. He's not going to be enduring. And that's why someone else who curses him would not be liable. We ask about that. Well, then that should be true for a son also, that the son should not be liable for cursing a father, because even if he made teshuvah, but he's not enduring, so he's not called be'amecha. And the answer is midi dehava lachar mita. And we give the final answer. For the son, we apply the same law that will apply even after the father is dead. There is a halacha that a son cannot curse a father even after the death of a father. And so here, the father is not dead yet, but is going to die in a few minutes. Well, if a son cannot curse a father even after he dies, certainly a son cannot curse a father when he's on his way to death, but he's still alive. And so for a son, we apply that law that he cannot curse him not after death and certainly not before death. But for a non-related person doesn't get a punishment for cursing someone after they die. And so for a not related person, we apply that also too when the death is imminent, because they're walking to the death penalty. And so we applied that same law. Rav Sheshet was able to defend himself after a long line of questioning, but we still want to know what's the bottom line, because we did challenge him so many times. So should we follow Rav Sheshet that a son can be the executioner of the court and hit his father or excommunicate his father? My have Allah, what's the bottom line? Amar Rabba ba Rav Huna v'chen tana deber bi Ishmael. So Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, said this, and it's also a braita from the school of Rabbi Ishmael. Lakol en haben naasa shaliach la'aviv lakotol kalelo. A son cannot be a shaliach betin for his father to hit his father and give him lashes, or to curse him and excommunicate him. So it's not allowed against Rav Sheshet. There is one exception, chutz me'mesit, shatarea Torah amra lo tachmov lo techaseh alav, except someone who incites others to avodah zarah. If someone's father is bringing others to do avodah zarah, then that person, the Torah says, do not spare him, do not conceal him, do not have mercy on that person. And therefore, that applies even to a son. So if someone's father is leading people to avodah zarah, then the son is allowed to be the messenger of the Bet Din. That brings us to the next Mishnah. Hamakeh abi ve'imo eno chayav ad sheyaseh bahen chavura. If someone strikes his father or his mother, one is only liable to the death penalty if he causes them to have a wound. A wound is defined as bleeding. That can mean bleeding outside, bleeding out of the skin, or it can mean a black and blue, even bleeding under the skin. But it has to be some blood moving around, getting out of place in order for it to be capital punishment. If one strikes a parent, slaps them in a lighter way, but it doesn't cause any bleeding, then one is not liable to the death penalty. There is a way in which cursing a parent is more stringent than hitting a parent. Someone who curses a parent after death is nevertheless liable. As we saw above, when the parent is alive, it's not allowed. When the parent dies, still it's not allowed and liable to capital punishment. However, someone who strikes a parent after they die, he hits their body after it's dead, is not liable to capital punishment. And the reason is because it's impossible to make them bleed. After they die, that bleeding, although there's blood coming out of the body, is not considered bleeding because they're not alive anymore. And so there's no way to make them liable to capital punishment. And it's not in the essence of the law. It's just that it's not possible to do an act of causing someone to bleed. It's not called a wound after they're already dead. And so that's one way in which cursing is more stringent than hitting. Tenora banan, now a braita. Abi v'imo kilel la'achar mita. This braita is expounding on the following pasuk in Vayikra ki ish. So there's double here language. Asher yikalel et aviv et imo, who curses his father or his mother, mot yumat, he gets the death penalty. Aviv imo kilel damav bo, and then it repeats aviv imo. So we're going to learn something from all these repetitions. And notice that when it says here yikalel et aviv, it says the word kilala, curse, next to aviv, and then imo. Whereas at the end, it switches the order. It again has aviv imo, but the word kilel, the verb is after, so it's closer to imo. Okay, so now the Baraita says, aviv imo kilel, a father and mother he has cursed. This refers to after death. That's why it's repeated at the end of the pasuk to show that even after death. Now, why might you think that? Think otherwise? Why might you think that that it only applies when the parent is alive? Cursing. Well, because one is liable if he hits or he curses a parent. So I might have thought that we should compare them. Just like hitting a parent, one is liable to the death penalty only if the parent is alive. So too, I might have thought that cursing also only applies when they are alive, just by comparing the two. Ve'od kal vachomer. And furthermore, I might have thought that cursing a parent does not apply after death because of the following kal vachomer in comparison to hitting. Regarding hitting a parent, it makes no difference whether the parent is is a sinner or not a sinner. In other words, it doesn't make a difference if the parent is not considered part of the nation because they sinned, one is liable. Or if they are part of the nation because they are law-abiding, one is liable either way. So you see that there is a stringency regarding hitting in that even if the parent is a sinner, one is liable for hitting them. And yet, but someone who hits a parent is not liable after the parent dies. So, regarding cursing, we do not equate someone who is a sinner with someone who's not a sinner. And odin shelochie bo lachar mita, all the more so since cursing is less stringent. That's less stringent we see in the fact that if one curses a parent who is a sinner, one is not liable. So it's less stringent than hitting in that way. So then all the more so, it should be less stringent in this way also, that if one curses a parent after death, then one would not be liable capital punishment. That's what I might have thought. That's why the pasuk comes and says, Tamud lomad, aviv imo, kilel lachar mita. So that's the repetition of the pasuk at the end. It already says, Asher kalel aviv imo. Why does it have to repeat, aviv imo kilel? It's to teach this, that one is liable even after the death of a parent, one is liable for cursing them. Now that is fine according to the Rabbi Yonatan, because these words are extra according to the Rabbi Yonatan, as we're about to see. Aviv imo, those words are extra. But Rabbi Yoshia uses the same phrase for a different law. So from where will he learn the law that one is liable for cursing a parent after death? Now, where do we see the opinions of Rabbi Yonatan and Rabbi Yoshia? In this Baraita, the Tanya, ish, Modomar ish ish. Why does this pasuk have a double language? Every person. Lerabot bat tumtum ve'androginos. This comes to include not only a son who curses a parent, but also a daughter who curses a parent, or tumtum and androginos, someone with indeterminate or both signs of genitalia. Even though it's not a son, but they're all included. If any such offspring curse the parent, then they are liable to the death penalty. That's ish. Asher yikalel et aviv et imo, who curses a father or mother. En li el aviv imo, aviv shelo imo shelo aviv minayin. I might have thought maybe one is only liable if it curses both of his parents. Well, how do I know that if he cursed only his father but not his mother, or only his mother and not his father? Talmud Omar, aviv ve'imo kilel. That's why, and you have the repetition of the pasuk at the end, aviv ve'imo kilel, aviv kilel, imo kilel. Dibre Rabbi Yoshia. So Rabbi Yoshia is the one that learns from this part of the pasuk, that over here you have Yikalel is closer to Aviv, over here you have Imo is closer to Kilel. So this whole repetition is to teach you that if one curses either parent, one is liable. So, and how does Rabbi Yonatan know that? Rabbi Yonatan omer, mashmashen en kechad roshma echad ve'echad bifnei asmo. Ad sheyefaret lecha katub yachtav. Rabbi Yonatan says, I don't need the extra pasuk to teach me that, because in general, this is ambiguous. Whenever you have a vav, it can mean and, it can mean or. So, which one should I choose? Well, there are other places in the Torah where when the Torah wants to say both, it says yachdav. both of these together. So if the Torah wanted to teach that one is liable only if he curses the father and the mother, it would have said aviv imo yachtav. If it doesn't say yachtav, then it's not and, but rather it's or. And so therefore, the Biur Natan doesn't need the extra words to teach me father or mother. Instead, he uses aviv imo kilel in order to teach me that one is liable after death. But Rabbi Yoshia, he does not learn from the lack of yachtav. He uses this extra phrase to teach father or mother. So then how does Rabbi Yoshia derive that one is liable for cursing a parent after death? Minale, dafkale, me umekalela, bivimo, mochumat. He'll use a different pasuk in Shemot that says someone who curses a father or mother will die. So we use that to teach even after death. Ve'idach, now the Biur Natan, what's he going to do with this pasuk? He'll use that to include a daughter or a tumtum androginos who curse a parent are also liable to the death penalty. We ask, why doesn't the Biur Natan learn that? As we saw above, here, this was in the name of the Rabbi Yoshia. He learned it from the doubling of ish. Why doesn't the Biur Natan also learn it from the doubling of ish? And the answer is Dibra Torah Kilshon Bnei Adam. He thinks that the Torah speaks in human language, and human language, you double something to emphasize it. You want to say each and every person in order to make sure that it applies to every man, every son. But it wouldn't he does not use ish to teach also daughters, and therefore he needs the pasuk in Shemot to teach also daughters. So in the end, they end up both learning everything, but they use the pasukim in different ways. Why doesn't the Mishnah add another clause showing a way in which hitting a parent is more stringent than cursing a parent? The Mishnah, as we saw above, does say one way in which cursing a parent is more stringent than hitting, but based on the Baraita that we just learned, it should add another clause as follows. Regarding hitting a parent, it makes no difference between whether the parent is not in your nation, meaning a sinner, or in the nation, meaning following law. One is liable to capital punishment even if a parent is a sinner. So you see, that's a stringency of makeh over mekalel. Mashen ken ba mekalel. In mekalel, we do make a distinction, and one is only liable if the parent is Torah observant, but not if the parent is a sinner. Why doesn't our Mishnah say this? Kasabar makshinan haka'a liklala. And the answer is that the Tana of our Mishnah must think that we compare the law of striking to the law of cursing, and just like the law of cursing we do distinguish, so too we should distinguish between in the law of hitting also. And in fact, there is no difference in both for hitting and for cursing. Only if the parent is Torah observant is one liable to capital punishment, but not if the parent is a sinner. And that's why the author of the Mishnah did not include it, because the author of the Mishnah disagrees with the author of this Baraita. Okay, now that we've answered that, let's see. Lema hane tana'e kehana tana'e. Perhaps these two Tanaim, the one of the Baraita that does not compare the two categories, Makeh and Mekalel, and they could be different from each other, is in machloket with the Mishnah, the author of the Mishnah, who does compare them. Maybe this machloket between the Mishnah and the Baraita matches up, parallels the machloket between the following two Tanaim. Tetane chada, kuti ata mesuve al haka'ato v'i ata mesuve al kilelato. V'tanya idach, I ata mesuve lo al kilelato ve'lo al haka'ato. Okay, these two Baraitot are talking about a kuti, that's a Samaritan. The Samaritans have a long history. They go way back to the remnants of the northern 10 tribes, when the northern 10 tribes were exiled in 722 by Ashur. So they sent the Israelites out into other places, and they brought other people in from many different countries, including from Kuta. That's why they're called Kutim. Now, when they came in, these were not Bnei Israel, and they were idol worshippers. But there were lions that came. This is all mentioned in Sefer Melachim, and the lions were attacking them. And they said, they're attacking us because we're not serving the God of this land. They believe that each land has a different God. So they said, all right, we got to follow the Torah here. And so they brought back one one Kohen in order to teach them Torah, and they started following Torah. So they basically converted. The question is it a good conversion or not? That's going to come up in a second. Anyway, the Samaritans were still around, and there are still some 900 today. But back in the time of the Talmud, there were many, many thousands of them. It was a major group. So a kuti, is one allowed to hit or curse a kuti? That's the question. The first baraita says a kuti, you are commanded regarding hitting, I mean you can't hit a kuti, but you're allowed to curse a kuti. That's one. But the other Baraita says, no, iyata mesuveh, one is not commanded, not regarding cursing them or hitting them. There is no law regarding a kuti. They'll be the same as a non-Jew. There's no prohibition of cursing or hitting them. So now, what's the at essence of the machloket between these two Baraitot? Sebaruha tekula ama kutim gere emeten. So let's assume that both Tanaim of these two Baraitot think that the Samaritans are rightful converts, although they were scared of the lions, and that's what brought them to conversion. But in the end, they converted sincerely, true converts, and therefore they are Jewish. Ma'ila behakami palge. So let's propose that the controversy between these two Tanaim revolves around the following question: Demor sabar makashinan haka'ali klala, umor sabar lo makashinan haka'ali klala. Perhaps the second Baraita says that we should equate the laws of hitting to the laws of cursing, and just like regarding a sinner, if you curse a sinner, there is no penalty. So too, if you hit a sinner, there's no penalty. And since the kutim are sinners, they are Jews, they fully converted sincerely, but they don't follow the correct halacha. They still follow Samaritan law, which is very, very different. And so since they are Jews, but they are sinners, and kilala does not apply, so to haka doesn't apply because we do compare the two. Whereas the first Baraita thinks, lo makshin haka li klala, we don't equate the two laws, and so since they are Jews, but they are sinners, so therefore cursing does not apply to them, but hitting does apply to them, and one is prohibited from hitting a kuti. And so if we interpret these two Baraitot in this way, then they match up with the authors of the Baraita and the Mishnah, because the Mishnah also says that we do compare the laws, and the Baraita says that the laws of hitting and cursing are different. So should we say that they match up? We answer, no, not necessarily. Maybe everybody agrees that we do not equate the laws of hitting with the laws of cursing. So what is at the essence of their controversy? Mor sabar kutim gere emeten, mor sabar kutim gere arayot hen. One opinion says that kutim are sincere converts. They're sincere converts, but they're sinners. Therefore, one is allowed to curse them, but not allowed to hit them. But the other opinion says that they only converted because they were scared of the lions, and therefore they're not valid converts. They're just the same status as non-Jews, and therefore there is no prohibition that applies to them regarding hitting or regarding cursing, at least no death penalty. But then we ask, but that doesn't work because the second Baraita continues and says that an ox of a kuti has the same law as an ox of a Yisrael. Regarding oxen owned by Jews, we make a distinction between shor tam and shor mu'ad. Oxen owned by non-Jews, we do not make a distinction between shor tam and shor mu'ad. And so here it says that ox owned by a kuti is like Israel, we do make a distinction, which means that everybody agrees that they are, in fact, kosher converts. They are valid converts. If everybody agrees they're valid converts, well then, we have to go back to the first proposal, so instead, we do conclude that, in fact, the machloket between the Mishnah and the Baraita does parallel the machloket between these two Baraitot, where one of these Tanaim in each thinks that we do not have to equate the laws of hitting and cursing, whereas the Mishnah and one of the Baraita thinks that we do equate the laws of hitting and cursing, Shema Mina, and that is the conclusion. Amazingly, the conclusion of this Gemara is that Samaritans are actually considered valid Jewish converts, which makes a lot of difference regarding many halachot. Let's start the next Mishnah. Hagonev nefesh misrael eno chayav ad sheyachnisenu lirshuto. Rabbi Yehuda omer ad sheyachnisenu lirshuto ve'yishtamesh bo shene'emar v'yit'amer bo umcharo. If someone kidnaps another Jewish person, he is not liable unless he not only takes that Jewish person and kidnaps him, but also moves him into his own domain. It's not sufficient just to grab someone on the street. You have to actually pull the person into your own domain. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, not only that, you have to pull him into your own domain and use him, meaning make him do some work. As the pasuk says, unless he kidnaps him and Veit Amer, he exploited him or sold him, then the kidnapper shall die. If he just takes him and doesn't use him for anything, then there's no death penalty. Hagonevet beno, Rabbi Ishmael beno, shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, mechayev, hachamim potrin. If someone steals, kidnaps his own son, well, this is a little harder to do because he probably lives in the house, so how are you going to pull him? So that ends up being a machloket. Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, says, nevertheless, liable. Hachamim say, not liable. Gemara will discuss more tomorrow. Ganav, mi shechesyo eved vechesyo ben chorin, Rabbi Yehuda mechayev, chamim potrin. If someone steals someone who is half a slave and half free, for example, let's say they were a full slave but owned by two people in partnership, and one of the owners frees the slave but the other doesn't. If someone should kidnap such a person, Rabbi Yehuda says one is liable to the death penalty. Hachamim say no. V'Tanakama la ba'ai imur, and now yes, Tanakama does not require that one make use of the kidnapped person. The pasuk says v'itamer bo, so how can you say not so? Amar bi'acha b'red Rava imur pachot mishaveh peruta ika benaihu. In fact, both Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda think that one does have to exploit the detained, the kidnappee. However, the machloket here is if he makes him do some work, but that work is worth less than a peruta. And so Rabbi Yehuda says, no, one is only liable if there was substantial work, at least a level of a peruta. Otherwise, one is not liable. And the Tanakama says, no, one is liable. If he did no work at all, then everybody agrees not liable. But Tanakama says, if he did even a half a penny worth of work, then one is liable. So that's why he didn't say add anything to it. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, he has to do something substantial. And so that's why he said no, until he actually works him in a substantial way. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, who was always known for asking these theoretical, intriguing questions, what if one kidnaps a person while they are sleeping? So they're not doing much while they're sleeping. Is one liable to the death penalty? Or he kidnaps a pregnant woman, not because he wants the mother, but rather he only wants to kidnap the fetus. It's just the fetus is attached to the mother, so he's kidnapping. So is that liable to death penalty for kidnapping? Is that called using the person, or is it not called using or exploiting the person? So v'tepukle deleka imur kelal. So we try to answer it by saying, wait a second, there's no exploitation at all. If the person is sleeping, or he's just stealing the mother because he wants the fetus, so he's not using the sleeping person or the fetus at all. So what are you talking about? La sericha yashen dizga ale isha deokma be'apeh zika. No, we're talking about a case where someone kidnaps a sleeping person, and then he lies down on the sleeping person, uses the sleeping person as a pillow. So he is using a sleeping person, even though he's sleeping and he doesn't know that he's being kidnapped. He doesn't know that anybody is using his body as a pillow. Nevertheless, it is some use. Is that called a significant enough use? And regarding the mother that he kidnaps, let's say he puts her in front of the wind and he's on the other side, so the body of the mother is blocking the wind from getting to him. That's not a very significant use, but that's what his question was. Is that significant enough? Derech imur bechach or en derech imur bechach? Mai teko, is that called exploiting or not? And we leave that question unresolved. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.